All right, ladies, let's be real. You've mastered the art of the boardroom. You've conquered every challenge that your career has thrown at you. And somehow still, you find time to hit the gym, to meal prep, and to keep them edges laid, right? But when it comes to those relationships, whew, let's just say the strategies that made you a powerhouse at work aren't exactly working in your love life. Welcome to the Relational Reset, the podcast that's here to help high achieving women, I'm talking to you, figure out why dating feels like a second job, but without the benefits. So I'm your host, hthompson, and together we're going to break down the patterns, the pitfalls, and yes, even the delusions that might be keeping you stuck in dating burnout. So, what is commitment really? And I feel like a lot of people understand the limits of commitment, which is what we should and should not be doing. But I think as a therapist, from my vantage point, commitment is so much more than just doing the right thing. Okay? I think in order to maintain your commitment, you have to learn to manage your feelings to actually stay committed. So let's dive into this. A readiness for commitment is less concerned about how you feel, and it is more greatly defined by the quality of how you are responding to what it is that you're feeling. Okay? This is so because so many times we feel counterproductive things even when doing what we know is right. Whether it's getting up and going to the gym, whether it's turning the other cheek, whether it's dealing with that child that just can't be soothed, it's like commitment can't be based on feelings. Because if y'all are a lot like me, the minute you start to feel differently about your commitment, it might actually change your commitment if you're not careful. So, for this reason, you don't want to be someone whose commitment is determined by what they feel, okay? Rather, you want to be someone whose commitment is determined by who they are, okay? One of the hardest things I've ever had to do in the world was becoming a husband. And it wasn't that I didn't know that I wanted Brittany to be my wife. It was that I knew I wanted her to be my wife, but me being a man didn't stop when I got married. What that means is I still see things. I still wrestle with temptations. I still go through the process that tests and tries my commitment every single day of my life. And so, as a husband, there are some decisions that I have already made that I didn't even realize I had made because I no longer respond to situations with my feelings. I respond to situations with my character. I now respond to situations from the perspective of actually being a husband. That means I have to pay attention to how everything I do and everything I don't do affects my wife. And if y'all been paying attention, I said that in one of the last episodes. And it's no longer just something I do when I'm in the mood. Okay? The problem I have with a lot of people who come into my office is that your commitments just change with your mood. I don't like that. If your commitment changes with your mood, then it makes you a very volatile person, and people don't want to trust volatile individuals. Okay? So, what this means is that another very important component of your commitment is your ability to actively process uncomfortable thoughts and feelings. Okay? You don't get to run because you're uncomfortable. You don't get to run because you don't like what's going on. Commitment says that sometimes we're going to have to do things that we don't always want to do. Okay? Now, notice I didn't say to soothe. One of the first issues Bahamian people face in this culture when it comes to dealing with issues, we want to soothe it too quickly. But if you move too quickly into soothing what it is you're feeling, you remove yourself from the environment that was actually designed to show you what the problem is. So, feeling better doesn't necessarily mean that you're processing your thoughts and feelings properly, right? Plenty of y'all out here in the club, partying, carrying on dead bad, posting everything on social media like you straight. But the fact of the matter is you're crumbling on the inside. That's because it is possible to be happy while still being dysfunctional. Y'all believe that? It is still possible for you to feel good while living in dysfunction. So that's why in therapy, if y'all had to sit down in my office, we don't necessarily rate the quality of your mental and emotional health by how you feel. because we know that feelings are not going to show you the fullness of what it is you're going through. I will rate your mental and emotional health by the quality of how you are responding to what it is you're going through. Okay? So you can be happy doing a lot of bad, unhealthy things. All right? So this now brings up a very interesting concept, and I call it the deauthorization of feelings as an authority on your choice. Okay? When you decide, that's you, or you, or you, when you all decide that you want a commitment, you are waiving your right to use your feelings as an authority on your choices. Pause. Okay? Y'all heard that just now? When you decide to walk into a commitment, you are waiving your right to use your feelings as an authority on choice. Wow. You can observe your feelings. You can have your feelings. You can even express your feelings. But you cannot allow yourself to use how you're feeling to determine what you do in your relationship. Feelings only show you what you're experiencing. But that doesn't mean that they care about you, and that doesn't mean that they care about your future. That's why when you respond out of anger, you will notice that your anger is very selfish. That's why when you respond out of hurt and pain, those emotions are very selfish because they only care about themselves. Anger just wants more anger. Okay? Sadness just wants more sadness. Y'all know that playlist, right? I know some of y'all got them playlists in your phones right now where it's like when you feeling down and out, it's just The Weekend, followed by Scissor, followed by some other kind of heartbreak music, right? It's kind of like you need help to kind of cry, you know, that kind of way. So what we should be focusing on is principles and character, okay? That's what your decisions are supposed to be submitting to. But the problem, a lot of y'all decisions just be submitting to dysfunction, and y'all don't even realize it, right? Like I wish he would. If he bad, I wish he would. If he call himself grown man, I wish he would do that, right? So that means, ladies, you're submitting your choice to dysfunction. But see, what the mature women like to do, or what the mature women actually prefer to do, is they submit their choices to their character. And so it speaks to how being a good person does so much more for your life than just being a good person. This is what regulates you. This is why you do what you do and why you do it that particular way. So to be clear, nobody owns principles. Okay? No one owns them. They are fundamental truths. And this means that you can't just take a strong feeling and call it a principle because of your conviction. I'm going to go back through that again, okay? You cannot take your feelings and call it a principle because it's your conviction. Because people don't own principles. Principles are fundamental truths. See, a lot of y'all like to express this thing, right? Y'all say, I call it living in my truth. Well, Harrison, my truth is I offended, and so I can burn the place down. And I'm like, hold on. Maybe there's a way we could do this without getting you locked up, right? Like, maybe there's a way we could do this without getting you in trouble. And how many times do we allow our convictions to be an indicator that what it is I want to do is right? That's wrong. Being a principled person is understanding that life is all about alignment. Like, even though I'm angry, even though I won't curse you out, even though I got two big rocks on my patio with your name on it, I am not going to do what my feelings are telling me to do because the authority in my life is the principles and my character. Okay? So the fact of the matter is, many professional women don't realize their convictions better align with trauma. It better aligns with unforgiveness. It better aligns with drama and dysfunction and avoidance. So what happens when what you do in life is dominated by unforgiveness? You end up thinking that you're healing when really all you're doing is avoiding. Okay? You all know the type who just catch flights, not feelings, right? Well, like I think it was the Bahamian philosopher Trey, I don't catch feelings, but I catch bus. Like, that's cool. You catch that bus. But this doesn't mean that you're forgiving. And a lot of times, your ability to avoid can make you feel like you've forgiven someone when you haven't. So now when that person's name comes up, or when you see that person for the first time in 1 year, why is it that you go all the way back to square one? Because you never did the work. All right? So when your choices are based on convictions that aren't aligned with principles, your commitment will not last. Okay? So let's talk a little bit about integrity. When we speak about integrity, we're speaking about your ability to do what is right despite the inconvenience of doing so. Integrity is interesting here because it demands honesty, and unfortunately, many people need reasons to be honest. Okay? When you need a reason to be honest, you really need to pause and ask yourself if I live in a life that I could be proud of. Because you should always be honest and truthful, right? But people with integrity are trustworthy, reliable, and accountable for their actions. They do what's right. They don't just do it because it's easy. They don't just do it because it's advantageous for them. They do it literally because it's right. So if I can encourage everybody to just hop on Netflix and kind of watch this series, I think it's called Zero Day, right? And Zero Day is about this former president, Mullen, who was brought back on to head a task force or a commission to figure out the source of these attacks that's plaguing the United States. And it's a very interesting story about integrity, about character, and what happens when feelings and integrity collide at an intersection. Very powerful stuff, so I suggest all of you guys to go and check that out. But getting into a relationship with someone that doesn't have integrity will turn your relational culture into an inconsistent one. Inconsistency, ladies, has the potential to do just as much damage to a relationship as cheating. Y'all don't believe that, eh? Everybody kind of holds cheating to be like the number one killer, but inconsistency is death by 1,000 mistakes. So it's like on Monday you told me you'd be ready by 9. And here you are showing up at 9:30, and then at 9:30 you want to eat your breakfast? Where we do that at? Oh, we know where they do that at. I ain't gonna say it though. So it's like inconsistency has the potential to really destroy a lot of things, right? Having integrity may occasionally mean questioning the motivations behind why you do what you do and how you do things for your partner. Okay? So I'm not just faithful when I'm around my wife. I am faithful 24/7. I'm faithful when I'm with my boys. I'm faithful when I'm at work. I'm faithful when I'm at the gym. Now, I ain't saying it's always easy to be these things. Okay? I ain't trying to say that we perfect out here. I ain't trying to say that we don't go through wrestling matches mentally and emotionally. But what I'm saying is, this integrity thing does not turn off. And for some of y'all ladies out there, your integrity turns on and off based on the situation. That's not healthy. Okay? So we have to now establish a process for this. Harrison, how do we deal with this better? Well, it has to be principles over relational history. I'll explain. When your relationship history is laden with trauma, you might begin looking for things to happen when they aren't actually happening. Okay? That's the problem when people don't go to therapy on time. All y'all people out there who saying, man, I got God and that's fine. Cool. Go to God, pray, fast. But you need to come in my office. Because sometimes you don't realize the depth of dysfunction and the depth of change it's putting on your life. Okay? Unprocessed trauma like this can actually create two different kinds of biases, okay? The first kind of bias that unprocessed trauma creates is called confirmation bias, all right? This happens when we look for information to justify our feelings instead of questioning it, right? So imagine, just for the sake of argument here, that you believe your boyfriend is doing something he shouldn't be doing, right? Common. And you're watching for signs of what it is he may be doing wrong. So one fateful day, he decides to put his phone face down on the table, and you say, see it there. A guy who was being faithful would never put his phone face down unless he's trying to hide something from me that he doesn't want me to see. And so, boom, you now confirm your own bias about him as true and real because you were looking for any piece of information to support your judgment. You see how dangerous that can be? The second kind of bias that unprocessed trauma creates is called conviction bias, okay? The idea that because you believe in something so strongly, it must be true. But we know in our culture, you could be dead strong and dead wrong at the same time, right? I think we all know at least 3 people on one hand where it's like they were so strong. They were standing confidently on their soapbox and it's like baseless. Like just just ignorance and vibes. Like we just out here spitting any and everything. So we have to be so very careful of unprocessed trauma because it can begin to get absorbed into our intuition, speaking on behalf of protecting us when really it's not. Okay? So prolonged tolerance to this level of trauma can give birth to one of the most unfortunate situations any relationship can be in, and that's survival culture. So let's dive into it. About 4 out of 5 relationships experience what is known as survival culture because we inadvertently spend more time focusing on what we can do to protect ourselves as opposed to doing what we can do to enhance the relationship, okay? And we do this for 3 essential reasons. Number 1, experiences. Number 2, beliefs. And number 3, actions of the relationship, okay? So here's how this works. Experiences foster beliefs, and those same beliefs influence the actions that we take in our relationships, right? So, in theory, it seems like it would be easy to just do different things to get different results, right? But the fact of the matter is, you have to change the way you're believing in something to actually maintain that change for the long period of time, okay? So, these 3 things is what constitutes our relational culture. It is the culture that produces the result, not the people. Okay? And we can prove that right now. When the average Bahamian goes to the States for the first time in a while, and after you get into your rental car, right? It's one of the first things we do. We buckle our seatbelt. And why do we buckle our seatbelt? Because we understand that the culture over here in the United States of America, they don't play about breaking laws. We know that many times those officers are looking for reasons to actually lock us up. So even in the absence of a police there, you know, we saying to the people in the car, now y'all don't do no foolishness. Please buckle up your seatbelt. Lord, you know what the speed limit is? Which way we going? That's the power of culture. Culture persists even when the individuals in them are not contributing to the culture. Okay? That's how you know you have a rich culture. So the people hold positions. You could either hold the position of a boyfriend, you could hold the position of a girlfriend, you can hold the position of husband or wife. But it is the culture that produces the results. It is the culture that says, this is why we do things the way we do around here. Okay? So, when is the right time to reevaluate your commitment? Well, let's figure it out. We know that the one guarantee in life is change. You will change, I will change, and so will everything about this life change in between. So, sometimes though, we see that people change for the worse. If today is as good as it will ever be again, notwithstanding positive growth, can you be okay in that relationship? What if their cursing gets worse? What if their drinking gets worse? What if their anxiety gets worse, right? What if the lack of boundaries exposes you to more pain and discomfort over time? What do you do in that situation, right? I think it's very easy for us to be blindly optimistic when it comes to the future because we just hope for the better. But we got to also prepare for the worst too. So there are 3 non-negotiable red flags that I don't think people need to be spending too much time working through. Okay? These are not absolutes, but these are things I often do not find couples recovering from. The first non-negotiable red flag is emotional or physical abuse. Okay? I feel like this one is obvious, but there is never a right time to justify abuse as ever being okay. Regardless of being angry and upset, abuse is abuse. Number 2, major differences in core values. Okay? Some problems are not worth the effort in working through because of the gaps in belief. Okay? And 3, the last non-negotiable red flag, consistent conflict. Okay? If arguments are more common than harmonious moments, it may be worth considering that the health of the relationship is in jeopardy instead of wasting our valuable energy trying to change something that we're better off just kind of cutting. Okay? So, when do we actually reevaluate? Step 1, look for the acknowledgement and desire of better in that person. Okay? They might not be able to be better now, But if they want to be better, support them and work through it. Okay? If they can't acknowledge a desire to be better, then you have to ask if you have the capacity to wait on their change or if you need to leave. Okay? Step two, look for consistency in that pursuit of better. You could change on day one. It's easy to be the most committed you will ever be on Monday, right? Isn't like Monday the universally committed day? That's the day we go to the gym. That's the day we eat the healthiest. That's the day we try to get as focused as we can be. But then by Wednesday, it's like we've already backslidden all the way. And so, what you're looking for in that commitment from that other person is consistency in their pursuit of being better. So, are they practicing honesty, right? Are they engaging in fairness? And the reliability in everyday situations, are you seeing that consistency in the day-to-day things? Or are you just responsible for them being better? Are you the one that has to remind them of the path that they're on, right? It's like I told you I wanted to go to the gym, but here it is, you're now having to manage me going to the gym because it seems like somewhere along the line it became more of a your thing than my thing, okay? Step three, we have to ask if they're practicing honesty, okay? Sometimes people can just feign honesty, and so we don't always know what the truth is, but honesty and vulnerability and transparency are non-negotiable here. If they are, give them the grace when they stumble or make a mistake. One of the worst things you can do to a person is when they're being transparent with you, and the first thing out of your mouth is a negative criticism, okay? How are you supposed to encourage people who are looking to be better if the first thing they encourage when they're trying to be better is a negative criticism, right? Just doesn't make sense. But if you see they are continuing to omit details and they are engaging in the same things that led to the problem in the first place, you need to reevaluate, okay? Number four, and this one is very serious, beware of anhedonia, okay? Anhedonia is when you begin losing joy in things that previously gave you joy, okay? This is often a precursor for depression. The presence of anhedonia may also indicate that you are operating beyond your capacity, and continuing to do so may cause you harm, okay? Now, I'm not talking about fluctuations here in your mood, okay? Anhedonia literally is when the things that used to previously bring you joy, like reading, like writing, like working out, they stop. That's usually a precursor that something is changing within you, personally, relationally, and even emotionally, okay? So what have we learned here from reevaluating commitment? I think we understand that in order to make this relationship thing work for the long haul, ladies, we got to be honest about the hard parts of what commitment really is. We've learned today that commitment is not necessarily something that should change with our moods. And so if you find that you are that individual, if you are that lady where people start to get scared based on your mood, where they don't know what kind of version of you they're going to get today, then it might mean you need to reevaluate some things within yourself. I know it can be hard to look in the mirror because nobody wants to see that they aren't what they thought they were, right? But what real sustainable change can happen without first beginning with acceptance and looking in? It's so easy in this culture to blame other people and to blame other things. We sometimes have to let the buck stop with us and choose to be accountable to what it is we say we want. And when you set your boundaries and you present yourself to people and you're honest with what you need and what you don't need, now you leave it up to people to show you whether they want to do this with you or not, okay? I've seen too many professional women who have used relational history as a justification to stay in brokenness. Okay? When you think that just because you had time together, that means you should stay with the person, or because you're familiar with that individual, that it means you should stay with that person, then you might not be living an efficient life, right? There may have been a time when you guys were getting along. There may have been a time when maybe things were better. But if the reality today is such that you're being disrespected more than loved, that you're being dismissed more than validated, then the history has no weight on the decision you need to be making for today, okay? So, ladies, I just hope that you were able to kind of glean something off of this because I really want y'all to have the relationships of your desires. I really want you guys to walk into the spaces that you want to walk into. But you can't just walk into it thinking that you've arrived. You can't just walk into these spaces thinking that you don't need to do any work. It's just the men around you because that's just not true. Okay? I want us to take a good hard look in the mirror. Let's be honest with ourselves. And let's ensure that the things we need to do to have healthier relationships are things we start taking seriously today. Thank you all so much. And that's a wrap on this episode of the Relational Reset. I hope you got some real gems to take with you on this journey to thriving in love. Remember that relationships aren't always about winning, okay? They're about experiencing, they're about growing, they're about enjoying the process. So if you found today's episode helpful, or if it called you out just a little bit, I want you to do me a favor and subscribe, okay? I want you to leave a review. I want you to like, comment, and share because maybe there's a friend out there of yours that really needs to hear this message, okay? Let's keep this conversation going. You can follow me on socials at htforreal, or you can go on my website at harrisonhelps.com for more insights, laughs, and the occasional tough love. And don't forget, I want you to use the hashtag HarrisonHelps when sharing your thoughts because I want to hear from you, okay? Until next time, keep showing up, keep growing, and most importantly, enjoy the ride. I'll catch you in the next episode.